In the heart of Mexico, where the sun beats down mercilessly on the dusty landscape, a story unfolded that would capture the world's attention. It's a tale of cunning, desperation, and the lengths to which some will go for freedom. This is the story of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the drug lord who orchestrated one of the most audacious prison breaks in history. Our story begins in February 2014. El Chapo, the notorious leader of the Sinaloa cartel, had finally been caught after years on the run. The Mexican authorities, weary from their long chase, breathed a collective sigh of relief. They believed they had finally caged the uncageable man. El Chapo, whose nickname means Shorty due to his modest height, was no ordinary criminal. He had built an empire that stretched across continents, flooding the streets of the world with drugs and violence. But now, locked away in Mexico's most secure prison, it seemed his reign had come to an end. Little did anyone know, El Chapo's story was far from over. As El Chapo settled into his new home, a stark, cold cell in the Altiplano federal prison, wheels were already turning outside. His loyal followers, unwilling to see their leader behind bars, began hatching a plan that would make history. In a small town just a mile from the prison, a curious sight appeared. Two modest houses sprang up seemingly overnight on a plot of land that had long stood empty. To the casual observer, it looked like nothing more than new construction in a sleepy village. But appearances can be deceiving. These houses were not homes at all, but the first step in an audacious escape plan. Beneath the simple brick walls and unfinished interiors, a secret was taking shape, the mouth of a tunnel that would reach all the way to El Chapo's cell. As the Mexican sun rose and set, day after day, a team of skilled workers toiled in secret. These men, handpicked for their loyalty and expertise, were tasked with an impossible mission: to dig a mile-long tunnel right under the noses of prison guards and government officials. Their work was grueling. Armed with nothing more than pickaxes and shovels, they chipped away at solid rock, inch by painstaking inch. The tunnel had to be perfect, wide enough for a man to pass through, tall enough for El Chapo to stand upright, and equipped with everything needed for a swift escape. But the diggers faced challenges at every turn. The constant vibration of vehicles overhead threatened to give them away. The need for absolute silence meant they couldn't use power tools or heavy machinery. And with each passing day, the risk of discovery grew. Yet, driven by loyalty, and no doubt the promise of a hefty reward, they pressed on. They worked in shifts, day and night, slowly but surely carving a path to freedom for their boss. Meanwhile, inside the prison walls, El Chapo played his part to perfection. Known for his charisma as much as his cruelty, he turned on the charm. He smiled at guards, chatted amiably with fellow inmates, and never caused a lick of trouble. His phone calls were monitored, his mail checked, but not once did he let slip a hint of what was coming. El Chapo was a master of deception, and he knew that the slightest misstep could bring his plans crashing down. As weeks turned to months, tension mounted both inside and outside the prison. The tunnel diggers raced against time, knowing that at any moment El Chapo could be transferred to another facility. The unfinished houses were drawing curious glances from locals. The clock was ticking, and everyone involved felt the pressure mounting. On the night of July 11, 2015, the prison settled into its usual quiet routine. Guards made their rounds, inmates slept in their cells, and all seemed normal. But beneath the surface, tension crackled like electricity. In his cell, El Chapo waited. His heart must have been pounding, but his face betrayed nothing. He had played this game of patience for months, and now, finally, it was time. Just before 9 p.m., a sound broke the silence. The scrape of metal on ceramic, coming from El Chapo's shower.
The drug lord watched as the shower floor began to move, revealing a secret entrance and a familiar face peering up at him from the darkness below. Without a word, El Chapo slipped into the hole, descending a ladder into the tunnel that would carry him to freedom. 30 feet below the prison yard, he found himself standing in a passageway barely wider than his shoulders, but tall enough for him to stand upright. A few steps in, he encountered an unexpected sight. A motorcycle affixed to metal rails. It was as if he had stumbled upon some bizarre underground amusement park ride. But this was no game. This was his ticket to freedom. El Chapo mounted the bike, and with a quiet purr, the engine came to life. He sped through the well-lit tunnel, the walls a blur as he raced towards liberty. For 2 heart-pounding minutes, he rode, covering the mile-long distance in what must have felt like both an eternity and an instant. Finally, the tunnel began to slope upward. El Chapo dismounted, climbing a wooden ladder that led him up and out into one of the unfinished houses. There, a change of clothes waited for him. In moments, he had transformed from a prison inmate to a free man. Outside, a truck idled, ready to whisk him away into the dark Mexican night. As El Chapo climbed aboard, he must have allowed himself a small smile. He had done it. He had escaped from under the noses of Mexico's most vigilant guards. The next morning, Mexico woke to shocking news. El Chapo, the country's most notorious criminal, had vanished into thin air. The government was embarrassed, the prison system was in chaos, and a manhunt unlike any other was launched. For months, El Chapo remained at large, slipping back into the shadows he knew so well. But his freedom would be short-lived. In January 2016, just 6 months after his dramatic escape, El Chapo's luck finally ran out. A careless mistake by his security team led authorities to a safe house where the drug lord was hiding. In a final desperate attempt to evade capture, El Chapo and one of his top lieutenants fled through yet another secret tunnel. But this time, there was no motorcycle waiting, no carefully planned route to freedom. They emerged a mile away, stole a car at gunpoint, and tried to make their escape. But the net was closing. Federal police officers, acting on an alert about the stolen vehicle, intercepted the fugitives. El Chapo, the man who had outwitted authorities for decades, found himself face to face with a new breed of Mexican law enforcement. Officers who couldn't be bought. In a last-ditch effort, El Chapo tried to bribe his way out. He offered money, homes, even jobs to the officers who had caught him, but to his shock and dismay, they refused. When bribes failed, he resorted to threats, warning the officers that they and their families would die. For a tense few hours, the captured drug lord and his captors holed up in a roadside motel, waiting for reinforcements. El Chapo taunted the officers, convinced that his army of assassins would arrive at any moment to free him. But when vehicles finally did arrive, they carried not El Chapo's men, but Mexican Marines. The game was up. El Chapo, the man who had once been listed by Forbes as one of the most powerful people in the world, was led away in handcuffs, his empire crumbling around him. Two years later, El Chapo was extradited to the United States. The man who had once ruled a drug empire with an iron fist now stood before American judges, pleading for mercy. But there would be no more escapes, no more second chances. El Chapo was sentenced to life in prison, his days of tunnels and motorcycles and daring escapes finally at an end. And so concludes the tale of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, a story of ambition, cunning, and ultimately defeat. It's a reminder that no matter how high you climb or how far you run, the long arm of the law will eventually catch up. In the end, El Chapo's greatest escape became nothing more than his last hurrah, a final, fleeting taste of the freedom he would never know again. As the dust settles on this tale of tunnels and triumph, one can't help but wonder, what other stories lurk beneath the surface? If you're itching for more hidden passages through history, why not dig a little deeper with us? That subscribe button might just be your ticket to the next great escape. What untold stories are you hoping we'll unearth next? Let us know below. Until then, keep your eyes open and your ears to the ground. You never know what secrets are waiting to be discovered.